When I first launched Rise of the Ronin, I'll be honest, I was underwhelmed. I was hoping for a next-gen game. However, my hopes for solace were dashed as I immersed myself in the world of the game. The gameplay left a lot to be desired. The erratic frame rate and uncertainty regarding the core mechanics of the game crushed my expectations. Add to that the simplistic open-world design, and you can understand my disappointment. The combat mechanics and RPG elements carried over from the studio's previous works seemed superficial and lacking in appeal. They didn't inspire the same enthusiasm and passion in me that I felt in previous Team Ninja projects. To begin with, many of the more complex elements that characterize Team Ninja games were removed or greatly simplified. This made the game more accessible to newcomers, but at the same time left veterans of the studio with a disappointed experience. The studio's shift from its unique style to gameplay reminiscent of Ghost of Tsushima raises questions about the game's creativity, originality, and identity. The stance system, while borrowed from Ghost of Tsushima, feels rather shallow at this point and does not complement the game's combat mechanics properly. Additionally, the game's narrative, while ambitious, leaves a lot to be desired. Cutscenes, which replace more interactive and entertaining moments, prove to lack appeal and variety. The game promises interesting features such as customizable difficulty levels and the presence of AI companions, but their execution leaves much to be desired. The easier difficulty level and the presence of AI companions diminish the sense of achievement and satisfaction of completing the game. The game's prologue serves as an introduction, introducing you to key characters and providing about 30 minutes of linear gameplay, after which a huge world to explore opens up. The game map is divided into regions, each linked to a bond rating. Starting with a 0 rating, you're sent to the first region where a village has been taken over by bandits. Despite no obvious explanation as to why this has happened, you accept the challenge and proceed to liberate the area. The gameplay is reminiscent of Assassin's Creed and Ghost of Tsushima, where stealth is often the best option before direct confrontation. With access to various tools such as a hook, rocks, and the ability to hide in tall grass, you engage in combat with bandits and other enemies. However, while the game promises an exciting open world, it proves to be less interesting compared to Ghost of Tsushima. Most of your time is spent liberating bandit camps and completing instanced missions, with too few side quests to make the game world more lively and varied. While Rise of the Ronin promised a stable 60 frames per second, the actual experience of playing the game undercuts such expectations. The game's performance system leaves a lot to be desired, with frequent frame rate dips to 45, which greatly affects its smoothness and gameplay. This aspect is certainly frustrating for players, especially considering the current standards of the gaming industry. Aside from the performance issues, Rise of the Ronin's combat system also leaves a lot to be desired. In contrast to the expected level of depth and complexity, battles often feel shallow and monotonous. Despite the presence of various character classes and the ability to customize skills, the combat mechanics feel simplistic and uninteresting. One-armed attack combinations don't bring the proper variety, and changing stances feels inconsequential and ineffective. In addition, the lack of effective parrying and the lack of deep strategy in battles leave players with a sense of superficiality and monotony to the combat experience. Rather than encouraging them to analyze situations and develop complex tactics, the game often results in mechanical button pushing and superficial interactions with enemies. While new features in the game, such as more weapons and the ability to customize equipment, add variety and depth to the gameplay, they can also lead to information overload and difficulty for new players. The combat system, while promising to be more accessible, may not be intuitive enough for those unfamiliar with previous Team Ninja games. Furthermore, the ability to switch between different stances and utilize a variety of activatable attacks requires a significant amount of time and effort for the player to master. It should also be noted that the game currently feels cut down compared to the studio's previous projects. The lack of more complex combos and move sets may disappoint fans who are used to deep and technical combat. This may indicate an attempt to make the game more accessible to a wider audience, but at the same time, it may lose its unique style and appeal to more experienced players. The narrative aspect is worth paying attention to. While a compelling story can be the key to a game's success, if it is not provided with quality execution, well-developed characters, and interesting dialogue, the story can come across as boring or cheap. In conclusion, Ronin Rising is a game that takes inspiration from ideas from other popular projects. It promises a compelling story, deep gameplay, and a variety of options for the player. But a more critical examination reveals potential problems, such as similarities to other games, imperfections in combat mechanics, and peculiarities in story execution and technical implementation. Despite this, the game can be an interesting endeavor for players who appreciate the combination of elements from different genres and are willing to overcome its flaws for the sake of historical adventure.